Aloha, Facebook. We're live again for another Icon Expert Talk where we feature industry leaders who are making an impact on their industry and they have so much abundant, overflowing wisdom to share. They're also people that I typically am very blessed to be working with and have a really good relationship. I've known Jenny for a while now, and people are just absolutely raving about her expertise as an emotional intelligence expert. We all have emotions and we all have relationships where we need to deal with people for various reasons. And Jenny is here today so that we can figure out how we can have our emotions serve us and how we can deal with them in a positive way, and let that not be a barrier to fulfillment and joy in life, especially interacting with other people. So thank you for joining me today, Jenny. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Great to be here.
And, we've had a couple conversations about this, and I'm always blown away by how much, like, the way that you describe all this emotional stuff, right? Because for me, I feel pretty emotionally balanced. I don't feel that emotions get in my way, but also realize that, a lot of people struggle in lots of different ways with their emotions. We've got a few people joining us, so I do want to include anyone who's watching. Drop a comment. We're talking today about relationships, and so if you have any relationship questions or you just want to share what types of relationships are most important to you, if you drop that in a comment, we'll actually be able to talk about the types of relationships that matter to you most. But Jenny, while people are watching and maybe contemplating what type of relationships they would like some advice on, I've been curious because I've never asked you before. How did you become an emotional intelligence expert and create this awesome scientific-based program to master your emotions called Emotional Mastery? How did that happen?
Well, good question, because I was probably the person least likely. If you'd asked my friends in high school, because I came out of my childhood being very conceptual and cerebral and intellectual and focused on the thoughts, to the point where really, like, I had suppressed most of my emotions below my awareness. Like, in the family where I grew up, feelings were seen as part of the problem, and you had to kind of get them out of the way so that you could understand logically what the problem was and solve it logically. So I was type A, high achieving, hard driving, busy. Like, if it wasn't paid work, it was volunteer work or whatever, like, just go. And I would have been that way for the whole of my life if that was physically possible. But of course, you're not designed to run at that level of adrenaline for your whole life. And so I end up burning out my adrenals and having burnout and adrenal exhaustion in my 30s. And I literally couldn't keep going. And so I had to figure out what is going on. Why am I in this state? Why am I running in an unsustainable way? What needs to change? So as an adult, I had to figure out how my emotional system worked from scratch. It was really hard to get the information at the time because this was like the early 2000s when a lot of this stuff wasn't in the public arena yet. It was not very well known, hadn't been discovered. So it was trial and error and experimentation. I was fortunate that I had a degree in psychology and I had some kind of background theory as to how our system develops and what the important key skills are and stuff like that. So I at least had a bit of a map. I wasn't completely lost. But every time I discovered something and it worked, I found like I'd share it with other people I know. And of course, I know lots of other people who are driven, high achievers, and, some of them had already burned out and others were struggling with, issues in anxiety and relationships or stuff like that. And every time I found something that worked and I shared it with people, it worked for them as well. And so ultimately I got to the point where people were coming to me just to get this information. And it wasn't like I sat down one day and said, I think I'll have a business teaching this to people. It was just like, this is so needed. Like, I don't know why they don't teach this in school, except for because the teachers don't know it. like culturally, we're just very ignorant about how the emotional system works. So parents don't know it. Their own system isn't working well. They can't pass it on to their kids. Teachers don't know it. Their own system isn't working well. So the kids don't even get a corrective influence at school often. And so we arrive at adulthood emotionally illiterate without even sometimes a language to talk about what's going on for us. Mm-hmm. And there are even things that are emotionally based that I never realized were emotionally based, like procrastination. You know, I used to think of that as a willpower issue, but it's not. It's an emotional driven behavior.
Can you explain how that's emotionally driven? Because that's very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of like how emotions affect procrastination.
Yeah, well, super simply, our subconscious is designed to keep us alive. So basically, if you've done something before and it didn't kill you, it's okay. It's a good thing. You should keep doing that. Something new and different, something that's challenging to you in some way, well, that might kill you as far as your subconscious is concerned. So every time you go to try to do something new or difficult or, you know, outside of your normal comfort zone, your subconscious responds as though you're walking into the jaws of death emotionally. So you actually have this fear of death that comes up, but we're super good at protecting ourselves from consciously knowing that we have the fear of death. So we have all of these techniques for keeping ourselves away from actually feeling that fear. And usually that involves keeping ourselves away from doing the thing that is triggering the fear.
Yeah.
Right? That's a good first step.
Easiest way not to have the feeling of fear, just don't do it, right?
Just avoid the trigger. Just avoid it. Yeah.
You mentioned being burned out and exhausted, and that's how you came across this technology. Then you started sharing it with people, and it worked for them. Like, that's a very nice way to get started with something that just sort of takes over. But you also said that emotional mastery has a lot to do with relationships. So how did being burned out at that time and not really having a readily available solution, how did that affect your relationships? And was your relationships with other people like part of your motivation to find these answers?
Definitely. It was, I had kids and I had no idea, absolutely no idea what kids need in terms of their environment and emotional guidance, not words and teaching, but role modeling. And as soon as I understood what had happened in my system, because I didn't get that in my family of origin in the right kind of way, I immediately could see, I was actually super angry. I was like, why did someone not tell me this before I had children? Why does I not given the opportunity to learn this before I had children? Because, now my children have come through those first critical 8 years where their nervous system is developing. So now I know my children are all going to have to do this process of later on going back and re-engineering their system to try to get it in a more balanced state. And for me, that was one of my highest motivators, was to be able to get to the end of this path successfully and to be able to pass on to my kids the information that they would need to walk this path themselves.
And that's really touching because, as a mother who's depleted emotionally, energetically, it's like you want the best for your kids, but how do you give them something you don't have? I mean, it's heartbreaking, right?
It was like one of the worst things about the whole experience, not being able to work for a year and financial stress and everything else was nothing, absolutely nothing compared to this feeling that, as a parent, I had fundamentally failed to prepare my children in one of the most foundational aspects of being a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's really upsetting.
And not just children. I mean, hey, we all have people that rely on us in various ways, right? So, wanting to be a good spouse, even a good, son, daughter, brother, sister, employee, employer.
Community member, like when you're doing volunteer work in the community, it's super important that you're resonant in the right way for people who are going through tough stuff. It's even just your next door neighbor, to be able to connect for your next door neighbor to actually feel connected to you. Like in a big city, we so often feel like we don't really know or connect with the people who are like right through the wall from us in the next apartment.
Yeah.
And connection is so important for us as human beings, feeling connected.
So welcome, Anna. Really nice to see you here. Yes, you can watch the replay. This whole story will be available. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions about relationships, Jenny's here to talk about relationships. But more importantly, how to master your emotions, how to, let emotions be a good thing and not a hindrance to your relationships. For me, what you're talking about is if we look at COVID, right, there's this big disconnection. Our relationships have all, I don't want to say been broken, but they've been changed. And I'm sure it's broken certain relationships, but the dynamic has changed, right? And there's probably a lot of emotions that we haven't really felt before that are difficult to pinpoint and hard to express. I've sensed sort of just a general uneasiness that wasn't there 5 years ago. I don't know if you felt that too, but it's like out there. We kind of don't know, like, okay, is the world going to close again? Or should I just plan, make my normal plans? So there's a lot of emotional stuff that I think is unprecedented right now. So I really love what the main work that you're doing is, Jenny, because it's called How to Be Free and Happy, right? And I like to think of the positive emotions. I want to be happy. I want to be joyful. Being free is important to me, right? I don't like to think about the negative ones. So how can we move towards a greater freedom and happiness and, and have our emotions serve us? It's hard to ask the question properly. But what's a process where we can learn how to deal with our emotions and master them?
Yeah. Good question. Excellent question. So what I would say for most people, if you're just starting out contemplating this, it's not something you've really looked into before, is that in our culture, most of us come out of our childhood with a really bad relationship with our own emotions. Like if you think of your emotions as a thing, like maybe like another person, right? So there's a person in you who's got emotions, and then there's you, the logical, rational mind, right? Most of us have a really bad relationship with that person. So we're either like we've locked them in the dungeon, we've suppressed all our emotions, we're trying to make them vanish, trying to keep them completely out of sight, out of mind, out of, just like suppress. Or whenever they're upset, we freak out and we try to pacify them, or we try to run away. Like most people don't have a really calm, peaceful, cooperative working relationship with their own emotions. I've even had clients who've come to me who literally have a phobia of their own emotions. The moment they start feeling any kind of emotion, and anger, shame, sadness, whatever, they immediately have this flood of adrenaline and they're just terrified. So their only really emotion that they're aware of all day is some anxiety, kind of generalized anxiety, because every other emotion they have is just prompting fear. So the number one thing that you need to do is get your relationship right with your own emotions. Actually get connected, actually be able to feel them, to have a dialogue, to figure out what they mean, and to actually be able to be with them so you can apply the tools and do stuff.
Mm. Yeah, it's important what you just mentioned about sort of if you don't deal with your emotions and you avoid them, it just turns into this anxiety, anxious, dread type of feeling. But then it's mysterious. Like you don't know why you feel that way. It's a very tricky, subtle thing, right? Emotions that aren't dealt with. I've learned that they're like messages, and if you ignore the message, then you're in trouble. So really interesting that people don't have a relationship with their emotions. How many of you watching this? I'd love to hear a comment. Have you ever thought about this? I haven't heard it expressed that way. Having a relationship with your emotions, right? Learn to love yourself, I've heard, but that's very interesting.
What does that even mean? Like I used to hear that when I was in my type A go mode, everything suppressed. I would hear just love yourself. I'd be like, what the heck does that even mean? Like, love what? Like, if I'm doing the loving, who's being loved? Like, it just made no sense to me at all, because the other person in me was invisible to me. And once I actually did this work, I totally get it. There is definitely two of me. There's the logical one, and then there's the one that's hooked into the body and the world and is experiencing stuff and passing information through all the time, but not in words. Passing it through sensations.
And I'm not to give away the whole punchline of what we're going to come to the conclusion of your work, because there's a very surprising end result of emotional mastery that I wasn't expecting. But I'll just give a little hint at it. I mean, our emotions they're sort of like fog on the goggles, aren't they? They're sort of clouding who we think we are, right? It's sort of, like you said, having a relationship with my emotions. Okay, so who am I then if I'm not my emotions? It's a very interesting thing to contemplate. A lot of people just feel that they are their emotions, don't they?
Yeah, but the emotions are, it's not like they're not you, but what clouds the goggles, what really gets in the way, is all of the stuff we do to suppress, manage, get away from, avoid our emotions, right? That's the fog. If we don't have a good relationship with our emotions, then we don't have any way to know who we are. We don't have any access to the information about who we really are, because all of that information is emotional.
We've hidden it.
It's like this deep ocean, right? And down in the depths of the ocean is who we really are. But all of the crazy stuff we do to try to get away from our emotions makes this big storm on the surface, and then there's just no way to get that clarity. So you've got to sort out what's going on at the surface level. You've got to actually stop making storms about your own emotions and actually find the proper ways to deal with the flows and the waves and the stuff that goes on at the surface in a way that doesn't obscure your view, that doesn't hide you from yourself.
Now, you have a process that can actually help you sort of quit the storm and sink to those deeper depths and get to know yourself. And actually, I know a couple of people have gone through this process and absolutely rave about it. I mean, every single person that I know, if they've commented on emotional mastery, like, you have to follow this process. It's so transformative, so life-changing. So Jenny, what's the first step to take to sort of, I guess first off, deal with these storms, right? Like, what do you do when the storms are raging?
Yeah, totally. So, we are suppressing and avoiding our emotions for good reason, right? It's not a random thing. We suppress and avoid our emotions or freak out about them because subconsciously we don't think we can handle them. We think they're too much. Right? So either when they happen, we freak out, or we just stop them from happening. We try to stop them from happening. So the number one thing that you need to do if you want to transform your entire life is you need to get a toolkit that will help you to manage the intensity of those emotions so that you are sure that you're not going to be overwhelmed by anything that happens emotionally in your emotional world. So the first thing we do with people is we develop that toolkit and we practice using those tools until people really get comfortable with it and they have that sense of confidence that no matter what happens in their emotional world, they'll be able to handle it.
You have a recent post about a snake falling in someone's lap while they're driving a motorcycle. Could you just quickly share a great example of this emotional first aid?
Yeah, absolutely. Great story. One of my coaches who lives here on the island that I live on in Thailand. So a big chunk of the island is a national park. So she actually has to ride through the national park to get home. Nice life. So she's riding home. It's night. It's dark. She's riding along on her little motor scooter, like a Vespa kind of thing, And suddenly she feels this boom on her chest, looks down, and there's a snake. It's fallen out of a tree above the road. It's across her chest. At night in the dark. Yeah, no street lights in the national park.
Yeah, it's creepy, man.
Just the headlight, right? So she just pulls to the side and kind of tilts on the motorcycle, and the snake falls off, and then she zooms away. And she's thinking to herself, look, I'm not going to like stop here and process that emotion in the dark, in the, who knows where the snake is. I'm going to get to where there's light. So it took her like 3-4 minutes to get to a 7-Eleven with a lit parking lot and pull in. And then she was like, okay, good. Now I can like process that. And there was like nothing left. In those few minutes while she was looking for a well-lit place to pull over, her subconscious had completely processed all the adrenaline of having a snake fall on you in the middle of the night while you're riding a motorcycle. She'd handled the whole thing completely calmly and completely processed all the after effects. Like no shaking, nothing. Like it was all done already. And that is the power of having these tools practiced enough that your subconscious can use them without you having to think about it. Because, anyone can kind of go, oh, I know how to calm myself down. I just lengthen my out breath and that's going to calm me down. Or, we all have our techniques. But if you have to remember to use them, when you're really, really upset, you're not going to remember to use them. So part of my process is practicing them enough that you use them without thinking. They become just part of your subconscious toolkit.
This applies to other things too. I could think of, maybe like somebody's yelling at you, right? What if someone's in your face screaming at you? I mean, a lot of people, and I feel, it's easy to slip into just yelling back and losing your temper. So would that also be an example with this emotional first aid would help you kind of stay cool, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. You can manage your own adrenaline levels on the fly without even thinking about it once you've got these tools in place.
And hey, if you're still watching and what are some situations where you think you might need emotional first aid? Situations where, it would be nice if I could keep my cool, and I don't always keep my cool. I know it's a hard question to ask because you have to be brave to answer it, but we'd love to comment on some examples here. But moving on. So, okay, when the crazy situation happens where the emotions take over and now I can keep my cool. Now I know how to deal with that because I have this toolkit. Okay. Have I mastered my emotions? Am I done? Is there more?
Now you've got your foundation in place. Now it's possible, right?
Okay.
So the next thing we do is we start poking around in all of those corners that you've been avoiding because something overwhelming might be there. So we have a process called the emotional pressure release. It's a very simple practice that, again, it's something you practice. But basically, it's expanding your conscious awareness into the areas that you haven't been consciously aware of before, where emotional information is, and starting to feel it, process it, understand what it is.
And when you say lurking, something that you haven't dealt with, can you give me a couple examples? Because that's mysterious to me. What are the kinds of things that lurk that maybe we're not aware of or we don't think about it?
Yeah, well, let's go back to the procrastination example, right?
Okay, perfect.
Like, you notice that you're avoiding, right? So you can use this emotional pressure release process to get underneath that surface urge to avoid and actually tap into the fear that is really there. And then by being with it, just allowing it to do its thing and give you its message, it releases.
Now, in terms of relationships, what are some of the, because that's very personal. Okay, I understand if I master my emotions, it'll stop me from procrastinating, stop me from blowing up in an argument. But how does this impact relationships with other people? I kind of get the self-control thing, but are there things that lurk that prevent me from having the types of relationships I want?
Oh, absolutely. You might be procrastinating on a task because you're afraid of doing the task. You might also be procrastinating on having a conversation with your partner about something that is bothering you, for exactly the same reason.
Or you might be afraid that they will, won't like it or will attack you because you expressed it, or various.
I mean, you might have grown up in a household where your emotions were not welcome. You weren't, making a fuss was not welcome. Children should be seen and not heard. You should be grateful for what you've got and not complaining and all of that kind of stuff. So, you could have lots of very good reasons to be apprehensive about saying to someone, hey, that thing you're doing, it's bothering me. Can we talk about how it could be different? Like for some people, that's an unthinkable first step. There's just too much fear from their past experience in their childhood, even though they might be in a partnership with a lovely person who desperately wants to know. It's still really difficult to get yourself to actually push the words out over your teeth when you've got that kind of family background.
So makes a lot of sense, dealing with unprocessed emotions, hidden emotions, things that we just, maybe it's been there since we were younger and we haven't really thought about it, but it's still there. So, okay, how do we go deeper than that? Okay, so now I'm aware of these things as they're popping up. Spoiler alert, I know there's more to the process. So what next, Jenny? How do we go further? Because I know that there's a really sweet end realization to this, which we're going to reveal pretty soon.
So the thing about this is, once you actually expand your conscious awareness, so you're actually able to get this information, you will start to see that there are patterns to this. It's not random. There are particular types of situations, particular emotions that recur, and particular behaviors that you are driven to do when those emotions occur. Right? So if you are afraid, for example, of raising a concern with your partner, then good question, Sonia. Yes, absolutely. We work with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. It's a science-based program. Everything is researched and backed up. It's all about the physiology. So let's say you're concerned about raising a topic with your partner. All right. When you feel that fear, you think about talking to them, you feel the fear, there will be a thing you usually do, right? And that thing might be that you just go and do something in another room, or it might be that you get a tone to your voice and start saying things that are a bit maybe passive aggressive to your partner, or it might be that the little things they do, like leaving the cap off the toothpaste or whatever, that normally wouldn't bother you, now just absolutely infuriate you, and you insist that you have a conversation with them about the toothpaste cap, when actually there's another thing in the background that you really want to talk about, but you're scared to talk about that. So it's all about the toothpaste cap, right? We all have these patterns, but we're usually blind to them. Once you expand your awareness using the pressure release technique, suddenly you can really start to see how these patterns are all hanging together. And then you can learn the pattern break technique, which is like the keys to the jail cell. Like, whatever these patterns are, if you can just identify the emotion that's driving you to do the thing and use the pattern break process to release that emotion, suddenly you are not driven to do the thing anymore. Suddenly you are free. And honestly, everybody that I've worked with, and me myself, like, I had absolutely no idea how much of my life was just automated patterns, just playing out, just what my whole personality before I had my burnout was just a whole bundle of coping strategies, of just patterns of reacting to things to make sure that I didn't ever have to feel these emotions that I wasn't allowed to feel.
Yeah. Like when someone says, "How are you?" and you say, "Good, how are you?" Do you really think about that? Or is it like, that's my automatic, I don't think to say it. I could be terrible. I'm good. How are you? Right. It's just a pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and, we have patterns of ways we deal with good emotions as well as bad emotions. And those aren't necessarily always helpful either. Like somebody compliments you, right? And you get this, oh, somebody complimented you. And then immediately you go, oh, I've had this stress for years, or, oh, it was no big deal. Like, that's a pattern to just bat away praise and compliments. And many people have that pattern because there's an uneasiness that comes up when somebody says something positive to you. But of course, it's really damaging to your relationship with that person. Like, they've just given you a gift. They've just expressed their appreciation and you just bat it back. Like, so to break the patterns, you want to break all of them. You want to break all of the limiting patterns and be able to be fully present and authentic with everybody and deal with whatever's currently happening in the moment without reacting with a pattern from your past.
And we also talked about, in other conversations, emotional Zen was a topic that came up. And I just wanted to point out, Sonia mentioning sympathetic and parasympathetic. I'm not the expert on this. Jenny is, but I've just been around a little while. I know I wanted to mention this. So emotions, they're like mental, right? Like this is stuff that's all happening. It's invisible. But Jenny, a lot of the work you're doing actual physical things. There's actual things you can do in your body, the way you move it, certain conditioning exercises that like, this isn't just purely a mindset, meditate and release, right? There's more to it.
The physiology is the fastest way.
Mm.
We can directly affect our physiology in a number of different ways, and our physiology and our emotions are so interconnected that absolutely the physical processes, the physiological techniques are absolutely critical. And that is actually also what parents need to provide for their children. And I'll say this to the parents that are watching just quickly, but for the first 8 years of your life, your nervous system is not fully developed and you can't regulate your own emotions. You can't calm yourself down properly by yourself. You need an adult with a fully developed nervous system to come and be with you in the upset emotion, whatever it is, and use their system to keep themselves calm. And then the child will pick up the calmness from the connection with the parent. And that is how we train our nervous system to be able to manage our own emotions. So if your parents didn't do that, if your parents didn't hang out with you in your upset emotions and help you to calm down, then you've probably got a whole bunch of unhealthy coping strategies that you had to figure out as a kid to survive with unregulated emotions.
And I'll add neglect, abuse and neglect, right? If someone just wasn't there to tell you it's going to be okay, well, that's a definition of abuse, but yeah.
Yeah, neglect, and benign neglect, well-meaning, like loving parents who just don't know this, will have neglected you in your early years. And there was some really bad parenting advice that came out. The whole let the baby cry itself to sleep or it will be spoiled thing. The parents who followed that advice, they basically raised anxious children. They raised children who feel like they're all alone in the world and nobody's coming to help them. Or at a fundamental level of their psyche.
Or perhaps parents that don't have the ability to calm themselves because they were raised that way. It perpetuates itself, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And even if someone normally has the ability to calm themselves, but then they have postnatal depression or some other kind of thing going on, or they're highly stressed because of work or finances or something like that. There's many things that reduce a parent's ability to do this, even if their nervous system was fully regulated from childhood.
So, wow, these patterns, it can be generational. It could be from the family culture. It's not even like your own patterns necessarily. You learned it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, culturally, we have a pretty unhealthy relationship with emotions. So we're teaching kids to cut themselves off from their own inner guidance and follow clocks and schedules and eat at certain times and sit in a chair when they want to be running around and all of that stuff. We're training people to disregard their own systems and not work with their own intuitive wisdom about what their system needs. So it's no surprise that by the time we finish school, we're all disconnected, living in our heads, thinking that the whole world is about concepts and intellect, because we're trained, for 18 years in school to only live there.
Yeah, that's really detrimental to society. And I don't think we're feeling the impact of that. It's a terrible thing. Okay, so breaking patterns is important. Let's just kind of summarize. So far, what's the process been? Because it's a really sweet process, and we've kind of talked deeply about it.
So
first step?
Yeah. First step, get the tools to manage the intensity of the emotions so that you can do the rest of the work.
Okay.
Right? Because if you're not confident that you can manage them, you're not going to go finding them when you poke around, right?
Right.
Protect yourself. So get the tools to be able to manage the intensity. Then expand your awareness and start to actually explore what's going on under the surface for yourself. Identify some patterns, break the patterns. That's a lifelong process, breaking patterns. You learn how to do it. It's not like me or the coach breaks a pattern for you. No. We teach you the process to break patterns. And then for the rest of your life, whenever you see a pattern, you can break it.
Just break it on the spot. Yeah. So procrastination's a big one. I've had a couple of people now who've they've been all their lives procrastinating. They do the pattern break process on procrastination, and suddenly they just go to the computer, sit down and start whatever it is. It's instant. And
And one of them said, like, yeah, a couple of years later, she got into a bit more challenging activities and it came back a little bit. She did the pattern break again and it was gone. So it's a lifelong toolkit to get you out of those dysfunctional patterns. But once you actually can free yourself from this prison of coping strategies, then the question is, okay, well, if all of that's not my personality, if all of that is just coping strategies, then who am I really? Like, what am I here to do? Like, what if I'm not just surviving this thicket of coping strategies, if I actually have freedom, like, who am I and what am I here to do? And so we have a whole bunch of really cool tools using symbols to get the intellect and the embodied experiencing self talking together and cooperating together, so that true self can actually start to act in the world and shape a life that's much, much more fulfilling and much, much more compatible with who you really are.
So the symbols that you talk about, are they being used to create the types of emotions that you want at this point? Like we've sort of just dealt with the ones that we don't want. We're free now. Are we free from emotions altogether, or are we now using emotions or creating the positive emotions? I'm not sure how to ask the question. Are we
So there's a big mindset shift that needs to happen here. And for some people, it's a huge challenge. And for some people, they take to it like a dolphin, right? But if you think about it, the part of you that uses language, the parts of us that are talking to each other, the intellectual, rational, logical self, right? You weren't born with that.
Mm-hmm.
That part of your brain develops when you're like, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, around about there, and continues to develop until you're 22. Right? So the person who was born, the person whose body this is, the person whose life this is not the language-based part of you. The language-based part of you is like a later bolt-on. It's a limb, it's a set of tools. It's not actually you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The real you is the embodied self, the one who communicates with these waves of energy that we call emotions. That's the real you. So the secret here is actually that the ego, the verbal self, needs to surrender to the guidance of the embodied self. So the emotions, instead of being a problem, they become the source of accurate information. If you're doing a bunch of coping strategies and avoiding them, you're not going to get accurate information from your emotions. But once you've cleared the clutter, you've calmed the storm, then when you tap into the emotional information, you get really accurate information about what is resonant with you, what is not this is not my person, this is not my situation. This thing is a place where I need to go. This person, I need to engage with this person. Your intuition becomes accurate because it's no longer based on trauma and the past. It's actually your present moment wisdom.
Awesome. Sonia's got a great question. Do you easily find people willing to do this work to face those fears and emotions? That's it.
It's definitely a process. And usually, sadly, because people being people, it takes something like it did for me, a burnout. It takes being unable to continue with my coping strategies. That's what made me look and find another way. So often it takes a crisis of some kind. A relationship's in crisis, or they've lost a relationship, a career crisis or burnout, or they've lost a job, or they've lost a business, or something like that. Something makes people go, okay, I have to do something about this now. I can't stop. I can't avoid looking at this anymore. I need to go here. Occasionally I get someone who's already had that crisis a little while ago, and they've kind of been mucking about with the general tools that are available, and they're super frustrated because everything seems to be either too superficial or very mechanical. It's like I have to visualize this in a certain way, and I have to put emotion into my visualization, and it all feels very artificial, and it doesn't feel very grounded in my own truth. So those are actually, for me, my favorite people to work with, because I don't have to explain the 101. They get it. They understand. They know that the coping strategies are superficial. They have been working on getting rid of them. They're just super grateful to have much more effective tools. And then we can go way deeper in the middle part of the process where they get into like, who am I really and what am I here to do? And how can I rearrange this life so that it's actually mine? And it actually fits me, the person, not fixing my trauma and my coping strategies.
And that's proactive and healthy to do something, before you really need it, right? Like before you're in that burnout, frustrated, exhausted, depressed, relationship on the fritz, everything falling apart. It's kind of good if you realize that, you don't have a comfortable mastery of your emotions, and that, you do get into these situations and you can see the long-term impact of that. It's nice to take care of it before it takes care of you.
Yeah, but people being people,
Difficult stuff to deal with, though.
Yeah, look, it's challenging. It's challenging to, the reason we're not dealing with these things is because based on our childhood experience, we're afraid of them.
Yeah.
Right. And to face a big fear like that is challenging. And, it takes a decision, an understanding that I can't go on like this.
Yeah.
In order for most people to do that. That was certainly me. Like, I actually mentally understood I can't go on like this about a year or two before the burnout, and then I ignored it and burned out anyway.
Yep.
That's pretty classic.
Right. Mine was, my willingness to explore these type of things and to face my emotions, which felt very dark and were very scary, was, also because I was burnt out and I had no choice. I had to deal with it. It got me, So that's why it'd be really nice for anyone that feels inspired, that doesn't have to go that far. I would highly recommend not doing it from, but the help is there when you need it. So if you're feeling that way, this is a good thing to work on. And actually very serendipitous timing, because Jenny has a special program right now that she's offering. Jenny, could you just explain the special deal you're offering right now for anyone who would want to go through this type of personal discovery process?
Yeah. So over the years, there's only a certain number of people I can work with. So over the years, I have understood that I need to train other people to take clients through this process so that I can reach more people. So I have a team of coaches, and I have a new batch of coaches who recently finished the training program. And so what I'm doing is I'm supervising those coaches, walking clients through the program. And because it's a new coach, instead of the full price of the program, which is $4,000 for the 6 months program, we're offering a special pilot rate, because it's a new coach, of only $1,500 for the whole 6 month program. It's the full program. There's nothing left out. There's nothing different. The only thing is that the coach is being supervised by me rather than being me or, somebody else who's been with me for years. But I don't let people actually coach clients until I believe they're ready. And, I have a diploma in training and assessment systems, so I'm pretty good at working out who's ready. All of the brand new coaches that are just about to start doing this pilot program are just spectacular human beings. They've done this work themselves. To be a coach on my program, you have to actually do the work. You have to go through the program. You have to implement the things. You have to show the results. You have to get the outcomes. So you will be working directly with somebody who has, in the last 12 months, got all of these outcomes that you want to get out of the program. So they're not teaching you the theory. They're teaching you from their own experience, as well as, teaching you the principles that we work by.
But that's pretty awesome because they've gone through it recently. It's not like something who's I've mastered this 10 years ago and they're kind of out of touch with it. And I'll just add that this is a well-established process. So it's no one's winging it. No one's making it up as they go. Jenny's led many people through it, and it's awesome. Everyone I know raves about it. She's got tons of positive, this changes lives, people who go through it. So if you'd like to learn more about gaining mastery over your emotions and understanding this process, reach out to Jenny. You can get in touch with her. You can leave a comment below. Highly recommend working with her. And she's got a great team, all great people. Like she said, wonderful human beings, people that care more than most other people you're going to encounter. the compassion's there, the love is there. It's an awesome group. I'm really glad that I'm connected with them as well. So thanks for watching. Thanks, Jenny, for sharing all this. This is a new way of thinking, I think, for a lot of people. Stuff that.
Yeah, it was certainly a new way of thinking for me. This is just completely the almost polar opposite of what I had believed all my life. And I will say one more thing about this experience too, because I think it's important to understand. Most of us believe that the way that we were raised, our childhood is kind of normal. And, you come from a reasonably comfortable background. You believe that you have everything that you need in order to succeed in life when you come out of school or university and head off into the world. And what happened with me when I went through this process was I suddenly realized that I had been going my whole life with one arm tied behind my back. Like the whole world of feelings was just completely missing for me. I was trying to do life. I was trying to succeed only with logic, only with concepts.
Yeah.
And suddenly, instead of like, oh, I had the perfect start to life, and therefore if I'm failing or unhappy now, that's my fault. I'm a screw up. I suddenly realized that it was a complete miracle that I had succeeded at anything, that I had created a relationship that was functional, that I had raised children that were not neurotic, given that I had one arm tied behind my back the whole time. So for people who are feeling that, they're feeling like, well, I should be further ahead in life than I am now. I should be doing better. I should be doing this process as you go, oh, now I understand. I am actually the hero in this story. And I have actually already triumphed over a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even realize I had triumphed over, that other people don't have to deal with. And what now on my hero's journey? Like now that I've shed this idea that I'm a screw up and I'm behind my peers and all of the rest of it, now that I've understood that I had literally, there was a language I couldn't speak. And now that I've learned it, now what am I going to do with my life? It's just a whole different world.
And that's awesome, because how many people feel like they're holding themselves back and they don't know why and they don't know where to turn? I mean, how do you deal with that? Well, this is the process, like coming to terms with who you are and being able to move forward courageously. I mean, without it even requiring courage, because, you're just okay with who you are and who you want to be, the becoming and the being together. So thank you for offering that, Jenny. I know that's something a lot of people are looking for. They don't even know where to look. Well, now they know. So
yeah, and right now that the timing is just perfect with this pilot program for people who financially wouldn't be able to do the full program.
Great opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jenny. It's always a pleasure, and we'll have to have another good conversation with you soon. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Really appreciate you spending the time to hear what Jenny had to say. And hopefully we can all learn a lot from this. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments, or if you're watching the replay, Jenny will be happy to respond, and I'll respond where I can too. Aloha. Thanks.
Thank you.